الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله أوله بلا أول كان قبله وآخره بلا آخر يكون بعده الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وأجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا حبيبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل وعليه الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الدائم على أعدائهم وغاصبي حقوقهم ومنكري فضائلهم ومناقبهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the opportunity to be here in the house of Fatimatu Zahra Salamullah alayha, so that we could commemorate, so that we extend our condolences to the Imam of our time, to each other upon the martyrdom of Imam Husayn and his family members and his companions. Tonight is the night in which we begin to commemorate the martyrdom of the children of Zainab Kubra Salamullah alayha, Aun and Muhammad. The history records that they were between the age of 12 and 14. These two individuals were brought by Hazrat Abdullah, who was the father, while Imam Husayn alayhi salam was departing from Makkah. Hazrat Abdullah tried his level best to stop Imam Husayn alayhi salam in Makkah and extend his period in Makkah, but Imam Husayn was sure that he must and he will. He was sure that he must leave Makkah, and when he finally decided to leave, Hazrat Abdullah had brought Aun and Muhammad and gave Aun and Muhammad to Imam Husayn that they should join him when he goes towards Kufa, and that they be supportive of the Imam. The reason why Hazrat Abdullah did not join, some of the references that we find, is because he wasn't well, and also he remained in order that the message of Imam Husayn was transferred to the other members, to the other individuals who lived after. Last night we were kind of discussing that how come the stories of Karbala, as there were nobody there to record, remain with us. And these are the family members who played role to transfer these stories, what happened to Imam Husayn alayhi salam, because the maqatil were written quite late, and even some of the things that were written at that time were journalists who were appointed by the Umar Saad's army. So the transformation of the story of Karbala, the message of Karbala, remained in the hands of individuals or personalities such as Abdullah ibn Ja'far Tayyar or Muhammad ibn Hanafiya and other close companions and family members who remained. Hazrat Abdullah was the son of Ja'far Tayyar, who was one of the companions of Imam Husayn, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and well known and renowned, who have given his hands, whose hands were shaheed prior to his martyrdom. That's why he's known as Tayyar, where the Prophet said that in Jannah, Ja'far, has two wings which have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by which he flies in Jannah to high levels. And the grandchildren of Ja'far-e-Tayyar, who was a strong fighter from the father's side, was for Aun and Muhammad was Ja'far-e-Tayyar. From the mother's side, it was Amirul Mu'minin. So from the lineage of the mother and father for Aun and Muhammad is very strong, which clearly indicates and points out to that how they fought the battle on the day of Ashura, which we'll discuss inshallah at the time of Masai. Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As we said, Karbala is an eternal legacy. It's a timeless legacy in which there are lessons for us. Karbala is the means of perfection for not only people who lived at that time or who sacrificed their life because they reached their Kamal through Karbala, but even for all of us, that our perfection and our Kamal and our Akhirah and where we will be in the hereafter is based on Karbala and our dedication to Imam Husayn alayhi salam and the cause of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. As we see in the course of history, there is one thing which is of value and important, and that is journey to Allah. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We came from Allah and we are returning back to Allah. Now our return back to Allah, how that would be, it is in our hands. All those who died with Imam Husayn alayhi salam, became shaheed with Imam Husayn alayhi salam, they came from Allah and they returned back to Allah. How they returned back? In the best way possible. Some of them died, become shaheed. Some of them became the source of their test to reach Kamal and perfection. That is seen in the case of Zainab Kubra. That the sacrifice of Aun and Muhammad was the means of her reaching to that perfection and Kamal, where she utters, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, that I saw nothing but beauty in the plain of Karbala. That is a state of tranquility. That's a nafs mutmainna. As the Quran says, irji ila rabbika radiyatan mardiya, that she is pleased with the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She's not only pleased, as the riwayat says, that when the news of the martyrdom of Aun and Muhammad came, she fell in sajda and thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that her children were honored, that they become shaheed in the reign of the imamat of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. So her takamul and her perfection is through these sacrifices, and particularly and peculiarly for a mother to sacrifice two young lads. And when she sacrificed these two young lads, she had no sort of lineage, no sort of genealogy that could have carried on. She gave everything she had in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hussein also gave everything what he had, but it was the Amr-e Ilahi that the Imamat be protected. But from Hussein's side, Hussein gave everything. He didn't really care. He was responsible to sacrifice himself and everything, and he brought the whole family to do that. But Allah, with His special, unique command, protected the life of Imam Zainul Abidin, so that the silsila of Imamat, so that message of the Prophet and the Quran must continue. So Hazrat Zainab, through the sacrifice of these two young lads, through the sacrifice of these two children, have reached that level of Kamal and perfection. Indeed, this points out to her status, where the fourth Imam, he himself says that, Anti alimatu bila muallima. Oh my aunt, you are a knowledgeable one, alima, without any teacher have taught you. Without any teacher, which means that her knowledge is directly inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is that ilm huzuri that comes directly from Allah. The same way as Rasulullah, that he never had a teacher. He was never taught. But Allah was the teacher of Rasul directly. Right? So Zainab Kubra Salamul Alayha have reached that maqam and that status and that level. That, oh, aunt, you are alima, you are a knowledgeable one without being taught by any teacher. And that's why she's been considered as Aqile Bani Hashim. One of the title of Hazrat Zainab is Aqile. Aqile comes from that Aql, the intellectual one of Bani Hashim. She was considered as the intellectual one. Her status was that. She has reached that level of kamal and perfection of her aql. And then such a lady can only, sacrifice everything what she had, and she did that. By sending on and Muhammad, and by telling them how that they should behave and carry themselves when they go on a battle. She prepared them. They conquered the Furat, but never sipped the water. She had made that condition, and in order to keep the word of their mother, they made sure that they conquered Furat, so that we have Furat under our control. But oh mother, you have asked us not to drink water. We are not going to drink water. They showed that and they proved that. So Zainab Kubra have done amazing sacrifice, and it is very much required to remember her, to revere her. Inshallah, in the Masai part, we're going to discuss a bit more in regards to how, like I said, Karbala, when we speak about the events that unfolded from a emotional, sentimental, and Masai point of view, many a times we tend to undermine the spiritual angle of it, the deeper meaning behind that. Hazrat Ibrahim, as we mentioned on the second day of Majalis, Idibtala Ibrahim fa'atimmahum bekalimatin, as the ayah of the Quran says that when Ibrahim's imtihanat was finished, bekalimatin or atimma, tamam, pure imtihanat Ibrahim ke tamam hue, bekalimatin inni ja'iluka finnasi imam. Now I make you, Ibrahim, the Imam, because you have fulfilled all of your tests that we have tested you. You passed all the tests. What was the last test of Ibrahim? Was the sacrifice of Ismail. And then after he finished that, he reached the rank of Imamat. And the rank of Imamat is not a rank as in physical nature. The rank of Imamat is a spiritual reality and truth. It is the question of wilayat. It is the question of wilayat, that a person reaches that maqam and station, that he becomes the wali of Allah. Right? So it is not a male or female. So Ibrahim, while passing the test of the sacrifice of his son, reaches to the level of Imam. Here Zainab Kubra Salamullah alayha, for her journey, ilayhi rajaun, reaches to the level of Imamat by the sacrifice of on and Muhammad. She has reached to that level of wilayat, and she had that wilayat. As a matter of fact, the proof that she has reached to the level of wilayat. What is the level of wilayat? When they command, kun fayakun. That's the level of wilayat. When the waliullah commands something, it is exactly the same as how Allah commands. Kun fayakun. When she was arrested and taken as a captive in Kufa, she raised her hand before giving khutbah, and he said everything, because there were a lot of noise. And she said, uskut, quiet. They say that even the ring that was hanging in the neck of the camels, they all stopped. And there was silence. And then she gave the khutbah. That is wilayat. So she has reached that status. And as a matter of fact, I'm forgetting the name of the Catholic priest who have written a couple of books on Fatima Zahra and also on Hazrat Zainab Salamullah alayha. Christopher Clohessy, right? And he came to Islamic College as well. We had a discussion after he published the book, and there are interviews in which he mentions that because him from he's analyzing the history, and he says that Zainab played the role of Imamat for a duration, because Imam Zainul Abidin wasn't in the state of leading, but the Imamat was done by Zainab Salamullah alayha. She was an Imam, she led, and she did, but as Aqidah of ours, we say that, okay, there are 12 Imams, But him analyzing that, he said, no, actually Zainab was the Imam. And obviously, like as we said, yes, indeed, the possibility, or she is, not the possibility, she is. She has reached, when she is alimatu bila muallima, that's the level of wilayat. That's the level of karamat and imamat as a status. So that happens through the sacrifice, the same way as Ibrahim, inni ja'iluka fin nasi imama. Here is Zainab salamullah alayha. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As we are analyzing what actually happened, which led to the massacre, to the sacrifice from Imam Husayn's side, and to the murder and killing of Imam Husayn alayhi salam in the course of history. And it is very important, not in order to promote some sort of sectarianism. No, that's not. We belong to that school that promotes division. We are the people of unity. We are not the people of multiplicity or dividing people, and divide and rule or conquer and whatnot. In terms of the political methodology that existed, but actually that was not the British methodology. Its roots are way beyond that. It existed in the past, civilization and dynasties and which were there. We are not the people of dividing, but we are the people of unity. That's why we always promote ittihad. We speak about unity. But at the same time, having said that, it is very important to analyze and reflect, so that the Shia school or the Shia ideology and the Shia understanding that we have in regards to the Quran, in regards to the Imamat, in regards to Khilafat, that we should be strong in that. And this will happen two ways. One, through our spiritual journey, that we spiritually excel. Spiritually excelling means that our understanding of the existence of God and the nature of God, as in Tawheed, that who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. When we understand that how Allah is introduced by Masumin alayhi salam, by Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam in Saif Sajjadiyah, by the sermons of Amirul Mumineen, by the du'as of Imam Husayn, Dua Arafah of Imam Husayn, through which we understand the existential reality, the existence of God from a philosophical, mystical, irfani perspective. Then we say that yes, this is it. These are the people, the Ahl Bayt, they can introduce who Allah is. And that's what the Quran also says. Subhanallah amma yusifun in Surah Safat. Illa ibadak al-mukhlasun. Allah cannot be depicted, described, because Allah is beyond everything. It is us try to understand Allah by using certain examples. When we see that nature of risk, we say, oh, this is risk and it's given, oh, then Allah is Raziq. When we see some sort of limitation that somebody is sleeping, we say, no, Allah cannot sleep, because when a person sleeps, he's unaware of the surrounding, but Allah is aware all the time. So la ta'khudhu sinatun wa la nawm. So through certain examples that is around us, we are coming to describe Allah or understand Allah. But as in truth, as in reality, Allah says clearly, you cannot, subhanallah amma yusifun, you cannot attribute, you cannot describe Allah at all, because He is beyond all definitions. As a philosopher says that, something that is defined must be clearer than the thing defined, because through that we have to understand what that is. So how can a definition be clearer than Allah, where Allah is the most clearest? Right? So therefore you cannot depict, describe or define Allah. Allah is who, which means mysterious. That's why the Prophet always said, Rabbi zidni ilma, oh Allah, increase in my knowledge so that I know you more. That's why the Prophet always said, oh Allah, increase in my astonishment, because Allah is astonishing and surprising. Right? So we cannot really describe. However, Allah have given a rule, a method of knowing Him in the Quran that He has sent. And like as we said last night, these illas are very important. If you just say La ilaha, trouble. You have to say illallah. If you say inna nafsa ammarata bisu, my nafs commands to do evil, the problem. Illa ma rahima rabbi. That illa has to be there. In this ayah, Allah says, Subhanallah amma yusifun. You cannot depict or describe Allah. But it says illa, except those who are the purified ones. The purified ones are who? Innama yuridullah liyudhiba ankum ar-rijs ahlul bayt. The Ahlul Bayt are the purified ones. They are capable. They have that knowledge. They have that profound understanding of what existence of Allah is. That's why these khutabat, du'as and whatnot, we understand Allah through them. It is not possible that a person can understand Allah without the wilayat of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Not possible at all. Without the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt, one cannot understand the truth and reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, one, we understand the importance of our school of thought, of Shia thought, through philosophical, profound knowledge that exists within it, through du'as and how God is introduced in terms of His nature. The other way, because Shias are well known when it comes to the history, and we based everything on the facts, not just on some philosophical or mystical understanding, which also is valid, but even when we look at the historical facts, we try to analyze it, we say it really makes sense. Without any sort of sectarian sort of approach to it, or without any sort of, no, we are right, you're wrong type of approach. No. We are trying to understand history, what happened. And then we were speaking about last night, the things that happened during the time of we spoke about what happened when the Prophet was alive, we spoke what happened during the time of the first Khalifa, the second Khalifa, and the third Khalifa we spoke a bit about. And I just wanted to point out to, very briefly, because I'm not going in detail, that those people who were appointed as governors, those people who were given position in the cabinet of the third Khalifa were individuals, the history have recorded that they were exiled by the Prophet for disrespecting the Prophet. But they were brought back to Medina with high respect and were given position in the government. Or for example, you have Walid, who was appointed as the governor of Kufa. Why? Because he was the brother of the third Khalifa from the same mother. And this individual was somebody who used to drink and who have led the Fajr prayer and recited 4 rakat instead of 2 rakat. And he said, I am very happy today, I could recite more. This is a fact. It is not a Shia narrative. It is history. So when you have somebody who is leading the nation, and you have somebody like these type of individuals, which kind of points out to what type of leader this is, who is appointing based on what? Based on favoritism. And mashallah, I don't have much time, but all are referenced and recorded. And we are trying to analyze it, what happened. We are not, pointing fingers or blaming, but it is something that requires that analyzing. What we see today in terms of our Islamic Ummah and the limitations that we see today, among individuals and the differences and the sects that we have, it's all rooted in the past. It's all rooted in the past. If the past is understood and analyzed based on our intellect, all of these differences will not be there. We do recognize that the 3 Khulafa were basically the Masumin, the Imams, were supportive in the sense that they have to have some sort of, ground by which the honor of Islam remains. And Hassan and Husayn, they were the one who protected the house of the third Khalifa when the Ummah wanted to basically, get rid of him and kill him. And eventually they did. Because of the downfall of not just, Islam, but even certain values. certain, those, as they say, musallamat, those things which were so apparent. Fajr prayer, right? This is like something that is so apparent, which is not respected, but rather based on favoritism, things are being done. The third Khalifa is spending Baytul Mal just for their family members. Then you have the time of the fourth Khalifa, which is Amirul Mu'mineen, and they say that the reason why people were not supportive of Amirul Mu'mineen when they analyze is two things. One, he wanted to establish justice, adalat. It was very important because the injustices that were taking place at that time was ila mashallah. Now, a leader comes in any society or in any political sort of party, when there are certain things going on, the leader comes in, and he comes in with the condition, because they came and forced him. They say that, I thought Hassan and Hussein will be crushed when they elected, Amirul Mu'mineen to be the first Khalifa, and he put that condition, that with this condition I will accept. Otherwise, this is no value to me. It's like a sneeze of a goat for me, Khilafat. It's nothing for me from a worldly perspective, right? The only reason I will accept is because of that I will establish justice, I will revive the Sunnah of Rasulullah, right? And then he tried to establish justice. And justice is a very important principle of our religion. And we are the people of justice. We should be proud of it. Once again, like as we said, when we look into our roots of religion, our principles of faith, you have Tawheed and you have Adl, justice. Why? Because justice is something that is essential to God. A God must be just. Otherwise, there is no purpose of creation. He creates and he puts, na'uzubillah, Fir'aun in Jannah. What's the purpose? Why did you say this is good or this is evil? Right? If you wanted to do whatever you want. Allah is not like that. Allah is just. He will put Musa in Jannah and Fir'aun in Jahannam. He cannot do vice versa, na'uzubillah. Right? And it is our school, it is us who have suffered right from the very beginning. The justice was basically attacked. The justice of Allah, when they usurped the fadak of Fatimatu Zahra salamullah alayha. When they usurped the khilaf, this is against justice. That's why we always say that Tawheed, Adl. Justice is very important for us. In the course of history, we have clearly seen how unjustly the followers of Ali were treated. As we're going to go a little bit later on to discuss what happened during the reign of Muawiyah, we will find that. Right? How unjust they were treated. So it becomes, for those who suffered, it is very important to highlight, to understand the principle of the adalat, of justice. And from a philosophical perspective, what is justice? How justice is defined? We always try to kind of do certain things in the margin. It just doesn't just become a historical sort of history discussion. Justice is as defined as putting things in its place. Things belonging to its place, that's where it should be, then that is justice. And when we look at the nature, especially now here in San Diego, there are a lot of mountains and whatnot, and it's beautiful. Or if you go a bit more, in the wilderness, away from, what unjust, how things have been created, for example, which destroy the environment, when we go in the nature itself, we find everything to be perfect. Nature is something that reflects the justice of Allah. Right? That's why when we see justice, we find peace in us. That's why when we go to nature, we find peace. It synchronizes with our nature. because human nature loves justice. As it goes in the nature, it relaxes, it's calm, it's peaceful. Because when he is in the city, there's so much of injustice sort of environment around the individual. It doesn't fit properly. But if there is justice being done towards the things that one is dealing, whether that be in the house to oneself as well, if I miss my Fajr prayer, right, I feel uncomfortable because it's unjust. I have done something which was not right, right? If I, treat my workers in an unjust way based on, for example, my personal desire, oh, this guy is, I don't know, a Muslim, or that guy is not a Muslim, so I should treat him in a different. No, we have to treat everybody equal. That's Islam. There's no favoritism, right? Everybody should be treated equally. So if I do that, then I feel from inside my voice, my conscience says that this was not right, right? So because insan by nature loves justice, and he would like to see justice, and he will always work towards justice, to establish justice. And that's what Amirul Mu'minin wanted, to establish that justice. The society was unjust, and he wanted to establish justice. But the amount of deviation from the Islam had been so much, it made it Imam Ali alayhi salam very difficult. That's why in Dua Nudba also we recite, and also in the Khutbah Shaqshaqiyya, which is of Amirul Mu'minin, in which he talks about Mariqeen, Qasitin and Naqisin. Imam Ali in this 4-year period of his Khilafat faced 3 different types, classification of individuals. And this classification, where he has classified as Mariqeen, Qasitin, Naqisin, these type of people, or these 3 groups, still exist today. It's not at the time of Imam Ali, but even today you have people like this. Like, for example, the Qasitin were those individuals who were behaving in an unjust way towards the Khalifa. Khalifa is chosen by the Muslims and everybody must accept. He is the 4th Khalifa. But Muawiyah says, I'm not going to accept him. This is unjust. When you have accepted the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, now is the time of the 4th. Everybody unanimously have accepted him. You're not accepting him as a Khalifa and you are waging war against him. This is unjust. This group of people were known as the Qasitin. Imam Ali says that they were unjust. And why they were unjust? Because Imam Ali wants to establish justice. The criteria of appointing governors when he took charge was based on the akhlaq and the diyanat and the religiosity of the individuals. And they were poor people. Completely opposite to what the 3rd Khalifa was doing. He based the governors based on his family relationship. He didn't care about what sort of religious background they have. As we said, now I just remember that when we were speaking about Walid was someone who was sent by the Prophet to a suburb in Medina to collect zakat. Before reaching those people who were in that place, they were informed that a messenger of the Rasul is coming, and they were happy and ready and prepared. Finally, Walid realizes that this group of people were against his clan and him before Islam. So he was afraid to go in. Without even going inside to that suburb, he comes to the Prophet and he said, oh, these people, they don't want to pay zakat to you. He lied. He gave this news that, they want to kill me. And then the ayah of the Quran comes. In ja'akum fasiq fatabayyan. This ayah of the Quran, that when a fasiq, Quran have regarded Walid as fasiq, corrupt person. There's ayah Qurani. Look at the tafsir. Now who is fasiq is appointed as a governor. What is the ayah? The ayah says that when a corrupt person comes to you and gives you a news, investigate that news. Don't accept. So Walid comes and informed the Prophet this. And Prophet said, oh really, accepted it, and he was furious. And the ayah comes that don't. When a fasiq comes, you got to investigate. Right? And this is just in the margin, this is used in usul al-fiqh as one of the principles of usul al-fiqh. That is, in regards to hadith from siqh, meaning that a hadith that comes from a person who is not corrupt, only one person. Because in the categorization of the hadith, in the classification of hadith, in the discipline of hadith studies, you have classification, sahih, zaif, siqh, different classification is there. Like for example, if you have a hadith from one person, it is a weak hadith. Mutawatir means that this hadith been narrated by many different people. Like the hadith Ghadir is a mutawatir hadith. To man kuntu mawla faz is a mutawatir. Meaning that this hadith was heard by you, everybody. And all of these individuals went and gave it to many other people. As it has been narrated by many people, is known as mutawatir. Continuously, been narrated, by many people, right? But there is hadith which is known as khabar-e-wahid, means that this news comes from one person. I was with Rasulullah, Salman Farsi, for example, and no one else was there, right? Or Zurara, the companion of Imam Sadiq, said, I was with Imam Sadiq, I asked him about this question, he answered me this. Now here, the scholars, they investigate in regards to this individual. Who is Zurara? What's his background? That's ilm rijal. That's biographical narrative studies. That's a discipline as well. There's a whole discussion of biographical narrative, right? I think I said we have like 11 volume on the life history of every scholar, every narrator of hadith who is there. So it's a maraji or ulama, it's not a simple thing, right? So khabar-e-wahid is by one person. They say that, okay, if it is coming from a one person, it's a khabar-e-wahid. However, this one person who is telling me is a good person. So I'm going to accept this as a correct hadith and use it in making a law. But it's only one person. He says, yes, what's your basis? Because some reject that. One person is very, it's a bit dangerous, for example. It's not strong like a mutawatir. So they use the eye of the Quran. And that is, in ja'akum fasiq fatabayyan. When a corrupt person comes and give news to you, you investigate. What is the tacit meaning of this? The tacit meaning of this is that when one good person comes and gives news to you, you accept. You see what I mean? The hidden meaning in this is that when a fasiq comes, you got to investigate. But when a good person gives, you accept. So khabar-e-wahid is used as a principle in usul al-fiqh. Now here Walid, according to this verse, is considered as a fasiq. And he is appointed as what? As a governor of Kufa. And Kufa was a big, very strong, city, you want to call it, or area. Right? So here Imam Ali alayhi salam fought the Qasitin, those who were unjust. And Imam Ali wanted Muawiyah to come down from his position of being a governor because of his background, who he was and what he was. Because now he's the person who is in charge. He has taken the reign of Khilafat. He is the one who's going to appoint governors in different cities. Just same as Uthman appointed, just same as the second Khalifa and the first Khalifa appointed the governors. It's in his hand, who is ruling. So he said, Muawiyah, you got to come down from the governorship of Sham. But he rejected. He did not want to come down. And then you have the battle of Siffin. So he had to fight. Then you have those who are considered to be naqisin. They are the people who betrayed the Imam. They accepted him as a Khalifa, but later on they broke their pledge. Talha and Zubair. Because as we said, Imam Ali alayhi salam, the methodology of his Khilafat was adalat, number one, and also was being economical with the Baytul Mal. He does not want to overwhelmingly spend to the family members, because he's the son of, the brother of the wife of the Prophet, I'm going to give him more or give a position just because of some sort of relationship. He wasn't after, as they call Ashraf Girai. He wasn't after that, he's the son of this, so I should respect him and give him something. So Talha and Zubair, they gave allegiance to the Imam, but they broke. That is the battle of Jamal. He had to fight. Right? Within this 4-year period, major battles. Right? And finally, the Mariqeen. They were the one who completely turned away from Imam Ali. They broke not just they did not pay went against the allegiance, but they completely regarded Imam Ali as, na'uzubillah, out of Islam, Kharij. They were the Khawarij. They fought with Imam Ali alayhi salam as well. There were 4,000 of them. They came along to fight Muawiyah, but after the arbitration, there's a history behind it, right? They just completely broke. And then Imam Ali had to go back, fight them, and then he intended to go back and fight Muawiyah, because the arbitration was a cheat. Right? There was cheating there that took place. And he intended to go back and fight. That's why Imam Hassan Mushtabah went to fight Muawiyah, because that's what Imam wanted. And one Imam doesn't go against the will of another Imam. Awwaluna Muhammad, Awsatuna Muhammad, Kulluna Muhammad. Salawat ala Muhammad. So here he had to fight all of these individuals. Now, as I know we are coming close to time, Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So 25 years of the reign in total of the first 3 Khalifas, Imam Husayn was watching. Imam Husayn was seeing. When it comes to the period of Muawiyah, Ibn Hadid Makki, who is an Ahl Sunnah scholar, he says that the values which were considered to be good at that time was considered as evil. Those things which were considered as evil were considered and praised as good. It has reached to that point. That's why Imam Husayn says that, talab islah, in order to create the reform, I would like to do amar bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. That's my purpose of qiyam. My uprising is to do amar bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. Because today, he says, what was ma'ruf, what was good, is considered as evil, and what was evil is considered as good. It has reached to that point. Why it happened? Who was responsible for this to happen? Within the 60-year span, you're killing the very grandson of Rasulullah, who used to introduce him, Sayyida Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. Look what has happened. You're not even valuing the principle of the Quran that in Muharram you're not supposed to fight and kill anyone. You're coming and killing the very grandson of the Prophet. Imagine to what level the society have reached. That there's no respect for the Quran even. Based on their personal ijtihad, based on their personal desires. That this man is exiled from Medina. Rasulullah exiled him, you're bringing him back. Right? So this clearly shows that how gradually the society, the Islamic Ummah deteriorated. We got to analyze this history without promoting any sort of sectarianism. It's important to know that. We are Shias for what reason we are Shias? It's not just our parents have said, we are Shias. No. Any intellectual person who have a head on their shoulder would say that this is something wrong that was going on. It was not right. And would side with the narrative of, well, of the Imams, the narratives of the Shias as today, for example, right? So now in the reign of Muawiyah, very briefly, I'm not going to go in detail, perhaps maybe we can go in detail a bit more, it was completely chaos when it comes to the Islamic values at his time. First and foremost, what we find or what we can analyze happen is the question of the maqam, position, honor of Rasulullah was degraded in the hadith with the fabrication of hadith. So many hadiths were fabricated by Abu Huraira to bring the status of Rasulullah down. And this is something reoccurring in history. Whosoever wants to bring down the status of Anbiya, they have fabricated the hadith. Dawood was somebody who sent his own soldier because he wanted to get married to his wife. This Bible. Why is that? Because the king of that time is somebody who's corrupt. So he wants the Anbiya and Awliya, their maqam to be low, so that he can, whatever he's doing is okay. It's a natural, that as I've seen. Things, history is kind of, as Hegel says, it kind of repeats itself. And there's lessons that we got to take this. History reoccur in different forms, with different libas, with different names. This fight that we see, Huntington says, is a clash of civilization. What we are seeing today is a clash of civilization. The Romans against the Arabs, for example, which was even before Islam, this fight was there. The Sham, the Mawiyans, why they fought Imam Husayn, why they fought Kufa, why they fought, it was actually embedded in their psyche. It was embedded even before Islam. Like, for example, tribal wars that are there in Afghanistan. It's not Hazara against another tribe, is there, who are killing the Hazara, they are killing them, oppressing them. They are using Shia as a satisfy themselves, and they are fooling themselves, but it's actually deep rooted even before. Certain things are, and it's a natural reflex and reaction of a human being. That's how you analyze history. There is a linear history and there is meta history. Meta history is you go beyond the names and faces, but you calculate the reflexes and the reasons behind it and try to understand it and be on the right side, so to speak, and try to get rid of the ignorance that is there. Be on the right side, meaning that you get rid of the ignorance that is there. People are ignorant of the fact. The hadith, he says that Muawiyah, there was a person, Ibn Hadith al-Makki says, there were people discussing, do you know who is Ali? He says, yeah, I know Ali, he's the son of Fatima. It's a very funny hadith during the time of Muawiyah. If you help me with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I really want to. Yeah, here you go. برای حاجی آقا فارسی هست، بعداً ترجمه میکنم. یکی از دوستان اهل علم گفت ما درباره ابوبکر، عمر و علی و معاویه بحث میکردیم. One of the Ahl Ilm said that we were discussing about, there's a Muawiyah time, we were discussing about, Ali, Abu Bakr, Umar and Muawiyah. و ادعی ناظر مباحثه ما بودن. Few people were watching the مباحثات, the discussion that was going on. یکی از آنها که عاقل ترین آنها بود گفت, one of the one who was the most intellectual one, he said, شما درباره ابوبکر و عمر و علی چه میدونی؟ What do you know about Umar, Abu Bakr and Ali? من پرسیدم شما درباره آنها چه فکر میکنید؟ What do you think of them? And جواب داد آیا علی پدر فاطمه نبود؟ Was Ali not the father of Fatima? گفتم فاطمه کیست? Who was Fatima? Oh, she was the wife of the Prophet. همسر پیغمبر، دختر عایشه. She was the daughter of Aisha. و خواهر معاویه. Fatima was the sister of Muawiyah. Right? گفتم حکایت علی چی بوده است? What is the حکایت of Ali? گفت در جنگ چینین با پیغمبر کشته شد. In the battle of China he was killed. This was the people who are converting to Islam in Sham. They had no clue at all who is Ali, who had no clue at all who is Fatima. At least for Fatima, I would say, and we can analyze that perhaps there may be some sort of room for that, because Fatima was known daughter of the Prophet. That's why Imam Husayn alayhi salam always introduced himself as, I am the son of Fatima. Because he knew that the amount of propaganda that was there against Imam Ali alayhi salam and the animosity that they had with Imam Ali. Muawiyah would snatch the toys of the children and would say that Ali have asked me to do this in order to create that animosity. Right? So here, this was the state of the affair during the time of Muawiyah. From where to where? And this becomes the very reason why he was easily able to regard cursing Imam Ali from the pulpits. It was part and parcel of the Jummah khutbah. That's how things have become. I mean, in one of the sermons, which is once again Ibn Hadid Makki says that he came to Medina and he cursed Imam Ali alayhi salam, Muawiyah. And Imam Hassan and Imam Husayn was there. They were sitting quietly, and then Imam Husayn stood up, and then Imam Hassan stopped him and spoke against him. There's hadith, complete hadith there. And where Imam Hassan speaks about the lineage. Who is my father, who is my grandfather, who is my grandmother, and who is your father and your grandmother and your... Right? So it has reached to that point, the Ummat-e-Islami. And another thing which I discussed, there's no time. One of the things that he created, respect for the Arabs, some sort of racism, and this was actually, we spoke about during the second Khalifa time, it was going on as well, peculiarly and particularly against the Iranians. And we see a similar fashion and pattern today as well. When it comes to the Shias and Iranians, they are labeled as Majus. They are, fire worshippers. That is the sunnah of Muawiyah. And as a matter of fact, today, what we see in regards to Islam, unfortunately, it is the Islam of Muawiyah. Tahir al-Qadri, a great Sunni scholar. I have met him personally. And Allama Maududi, a great Sunni scholar, who have written books and articles and essays against the reality of Muawiyah. Them being Sunni, they have said things. Tahir al-Qadri he hasn't published it yet, but there is something they're writing, and you will see the light of publication soon. That the point is of education, educating people, and also for us to have a greater understanding of our school of thought. We are not, as we said, trying to create sectarianism. The talk is not of sect, but is making these are the months to make our aqidah strong, to make our history strong, to understand why the qiyam of Imam Husayn, why this sacrifice was there, why he sacrificed everything. Because this was the Jamia, this was the society. It has reached to that point. And as we know that there were ashab of Imam Husayn who understood and supported. And also we know that this uprising was Imam Husayn was a very unique Manawi, Tawheedi uprising. A society who is engaged with these type of worldly affair, where the society have become, the ummah have become, instead of being God-centric, dunya-centric, world-centric, there comes Husayn. The Dua of Arafah, Imam Husayn, Tawheed, the spirituality, the manaviyat in Dua Arafah. I mean, you have this worldly tariqi analysis that you have to understand, but at the same time, look at the insight, look at the manaviyat, look at the spirituality, that angle of Tawheed, where Imam Husayn is leaving that legacy to understand. The truth is that understanding that Tawheed. Be away from all of this sectarianism and multiplicity and whatnot. It is good to understand that, but the true message is the message of Tawheed. Husayn have to leave that Tawheed Muhammadi, that Tawheed Qur'ani. That Tawheed should remain, even if my life is gone. As we said, our discussion from last year, for those, if they want to, check the discussions from last year, Majalises is on our website as well. The topic of mine was last year was the supplication of the saint, the supplication of Husayn, which is Dua Arafah, which is the theoretical understanding of what Tawheed is. And if you want to understand the practical understanding of Tawheed, that is Karbala. He showed Tawheed in action. He showed Tawheed in his understanding in Arafah, right? And I'm thankful to, this makan, this place, and all of you. I always say that, I'm nothing, and whatever happens is because of you. I wasn't planning to speak about Tariq as I was speaking to Mahdi Bhai earlier, but now I say that because I'm not a very, to speak about history that much. I'm more into theology and philosophy and all that. But I realize that no, and inshallah I will make this as a module for our Hausa to discuss about, the events that unfolded in history to understand. It's very important for our youth, for our youngsters. There should be workshop. We come here and we cry and we discuss and we leave. But these are very important issues to be highlighted in every different centers. What happened in history? How the Ahl Bayt were treated, right? Apart from that Manavi aspect, this is also very important. So what comes to me is because of all of you, and I thank you all, for that, for giving me that opportunity to really bring this to light. And for that Tawheed, for that Tawheed Manavi, that aspect is there in Karbala as well. It's not just a history. It's that Irfani aspect. That aspect where Zainab says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. I saw nothing but beauty. What was that? Was beauty. The sacrifice of On and Muhammad was beautiful. Where Zainab lifts Husayn, as they say, Sham-e Ghariban. Zainab lifts the body of Husayn, which had no head. And she says, Allahumma taqabbal hadha qali. Oh Allah, accept this little sacrifice of ours. We know how Husayn is to Zainab. So important. Husayn is everything for Zainab. But vis-a-vis God, vis-a-vis Allah, it is qaleel. This is nothing what we have given in the way of Allah. That is the Tawheedi vision. That is Zainab. As they say that when she prepared On and Muhammad, she tied the sword and asked that they should go to their uncle to seek permission to go and fight. When they came to Husayn, the sword was so big that it was dragging on the ground because they haven't even reached that height. Right? The uncle had to tie them to the steed, to the places of where they placed the feet. This is how On and Muhammad were. They say that Husayn was not allowing On and Muhammad to go and fight because they were the children of Zainab and they were the amanat, trust given by Abdullah to Husayn. Right? And he wasn't allowing them. He was rejecting them. He was asking them to go back. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the battle on the day of Ashura was a day which was busy for Husayn. Planning, fighting, bringing the bodies, from the battlefield, consoling people, extending condolences to the family members. It was a busy day for Hussein. And as he was in the midst of the battle, all of a sudden Hussein sees Zainab standing at the door of the Qaima. And so Hussein stops everything. And Hussein comes to Zainab. Zainab, how come you are here? He says, Bhaiya Jaan, میں یہ دو بعنوان صدقہ آپ کے لیے لائی ہوں کہ ان کی جان قربان ہو جائے آپ کے لیے، کیونکہ ایک ایک منٹ اور ایک ایک سیکنڈ حسین کا اس زمین پر اتنا معنی رکھتا ہے کہ ہزاروں جان بھی قربان ہو جائے، ایک سیکنڈ بھی اگر حسین زندہ رہے تو خدا کی رحمت اس زمین پہ زیادہ رہے گی. مقصد اور حقیقت یہ تھی کہ حسین کو آخری میں انہیں شہادت ملی ہے کیونکہ نہیں چاہتے تھے کہ حسین اس دنیا سے جلدی چلے جائے. اسی لیے صدقہ کب دیتے ہیں؟ جب جان پہ آتا ہے تو صدقہ دیتے ہیں. صدقہ دینے سے جان دیر سے جاتی ہے. اسی وجہ سے ایک ایک شہید اپنے آپ کو صدقہ عنوان کر رہا تھا، اپنے آپ کو صدقہ سمجھتا تھا جان حسین کے لیے. اس لیے زینب کہتی ہے کہ یہ صدقہ ہے آپ کے لیے میرے بھائی. اور پھر یہاں پہ حسین کہتے ہیں کہ میں عبداللہ کو کیا جواب دوں گا؟ تو یہاں پہ زینب کہتی ہے عبداللہ نے اسی لیے تو ان دونوں کو بھیجا ہے کہ میں ان کی جان آپ کے جان پہ سے قربان کر دوں. اور کہا گیا ہے کہ اون و محمد کو امام حسین علیہ السلام نے تیار کیا. مقاتل میں دو ایسے شہید ملتے ہیں جن کو امام حسین تیار کرتے ہیں. ایک ہے حضرت شہزادے قاسم اور اون محمد، کیونکہ محبت تھی، بہن کی اولاد تھی. اور پھر جب تیار کر کے بھیجتے ہیں اور یہ دو جوان 12 سال اور 14 سال بچے ہیں جب جنگ میں آتے ہیں، لیکن جعفر طیار کے پوترے ہیں، علی مرتضیٰ کے نواسے ہیں. دونوں مل کر کیا مارکے کی جنگ کرتے ہیں، دونوں مل کر فرات پہ قبضہ کرتے ہیں. لیکن جب قبضہ کر کے قیام کے طرف دیکھتے ہیں، وہ وصیت ماں کی یاد آتی ہے کہ پانی نہ پینا اون اور محمد، فرات پہ تم جاؤ گے لیکن پانی نہ پینا کیونکہ حسین پیاسا ہے. پانی نہ پیا. اور پھر عمر سعد کی صدا بلند ہوتی ہے کہ ان پہ ہم قابو نہیں پائیں گے، ہمیں چاہیے کہ ان دونوں کو جدا کیا جائے. ان دونوں میں جدائی ڈالی گئی. جب ان دونوں کو جدا کیا گیا، تمام قدرت کے ساتھ ان کے اوپر حملے ور ہوتے ہیں. محمد کو شہید کیا گیا. جب بھائی دیکھتا ہے کہ ایک اپنے بھائی کی مدد کو پکار رہا ہے تو دوسرا بھائی مدد کے لیے جاتا ہے، اور جب یہ دوسرا بھائی مدد کے لیے جاتا ہے تو اسے بھی شہید کیا جاتا ہے. جب یہ دونوں کو شہید کیا گیا اور ان کی لاش ابو الفضل عباس اور امام حسین اور علی اکبر لے کر آتے ہیں، تمام بیویاں گرنے کرنے کے لیے آ جاتی ہے، لیکن ان گریا کرنے والیوں میں زینب نظر نہیں آتی. جب پوچھا گیا آخر زینب کیوں نظر نہیں آ رہی ہے تو زینب فرماتی ہے کہ میں نہیں چاہتی کہ میرے بھائی کو یہ خیال آ جائے کہ حسین کی طرف سے اون اور محمد شہید ہوئے ہیں. قدرت اور جرت اور عزم زینب دیکھیے کہ اون اور محمد کے لیے گریا کرنے نہیں آئی، لیکن جب اکبر کی لاش آتی ہے تو کہا گیا ہے کہ قیام سے باہر نکل جاتی ہے اور بھائی کے شانوں پہ ہاتھ رکھ کے کہتی ہے بھیا انا للہ و انا الیہ راجعون. زینب کا عزم کو تو دیکھیے. جب زینب کو گرفتار کر کے جب شام غریباں ہوئی، جب خیمے جلا دیے گئے تو زینب چھوٹے چھوٹے بچوں کو جمع کر رہی ہے. کہا گیا ہے کہ چھوٹے چھوٹے بچوں کو جمع کرتے ہوئے دو ننھی لاشیں زمین پر ہوتی ہے. اسے جب ہٹاتی ہے تو پتہ چلتا ہے کہ اون اور محمد ہے، لیکن پھر بھی پیچھے سکینہ کے جاتی ہے، سکینہ کو ڈھونڈتے ہوئے کہاں ہے. عزم زینب یہ ہے. جب گرفتار کر کے لے جا گیا شام میں، اور جب سروں کو دیا گیا ہے، جب سروں کو ان کے بیویوں کو اور ان کے ماؤں کو جب سروں کو دیا گیا تو کہا گیا ہے کہ دو چھوٹے چھوٹے سر تشت میں رکھے ہوئے تھے کسی نے اس سروں کو کلیم نہیں کیا، لیکن جب پتہ لگا کہ یہ سر کس کے ہے تو یہ سر اون اور محمد کے ہے، ان کی ماں نہیں ہے، آیا یہ یتیم ہے، نہیں، زینب حسین کے سر کے ساتھ۔ جب گرفتار کر کے لے جایا گیا شام میں، اور جب رہائی ملی، مدینہ جب پہنچی ہے، نانا کے خبر پر جا کے صبح کی رودات سنائی ہے، لیکن اور محمد کی شہادت کا ذکر نہیں کیا۔ کب شہادت کا ذکر کیا ہے؟ جب گھر میں جاتی ہے، دروازہ کھول کر اپنے آپ کو زمین پر گرا دیتی ہے، کہتی ہے کہ یہی وہ کنواں تھا اور محمد کا، اور یہی وہ حجرہ تھا۔ اللہ لعنت اللہ علی قوم الظالمین، سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون۔ ماتم حسین، یا 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 حسین۔